Kieran Trippier leaving Newcastle, potentially a max exodus of players this summer. How's it, everybody? Welcome back to Media Fontainer. It's been 2 long weeks without any Premier League football. We had the FA Cup and international football over the last 2 weeks, but lots of news. Kieran Trippier announced that he will be leaving Newcastle, but actually his contract was expiring anyway. In this video, I thought we'd take a look at what it meant to Newcastle when he actually joined, the impact that he had whilst he was at the club, and also what this means for Newcastle at right back, with massive rumours swirling about Tino Livramento moving on as well. It would be good to have a look at Kieran Trippier's career, how he ended up at Newcastle and what impact he's had on the team and the club as a whole. Where did it all start for Kieran Trippier? Well, he actually joined Manchester City's academy at the age of 9 and progressed through the ranks at the club and signed his first contract in 2007. And at the age of 21, he was on loan at Burnley and actually made his loan move permanent. And guess who signed him? The current Newcastle manager, Eddie Howe. At Burnley is probably where he really started to make a name for himself. He helped take Burnley out the Championship into the Premier League and overall made 170 appearances for the club. And when he was at Burnley, he then got a very big move to Tottenham Hotspur in June 2015 for £3.5 million. His move to Spurs, playing under Mauricio Pochettino, was intended to give Kyle Walker competition at right back. It took a while to get himself into the team. Kyle Walker got some injuries and obviously got his move to Man City, and then Kieran Trippier really found his place as a regular right back, breaking into the England side whilst he was there as well, and establishing himself as one of the best right backs in English football. He went on to make 69 appearances for Spurs, and then kind of controversially, he became the first English player for 95 years to sign for Atletico Madrid, playing under Diego Simeone. It seemed to be a bit of a match made in heaven. Diego Simeone is obviously a very aggressive, front-footed, in-your-face type of coach, and it seemed to be a perfect marriage with Kieran Trippier, also quite feisty, niggly, and he really did well at Atletico Madrid by winning La Liga on the final day of the season in 2020-2021. And then surprisingly, in the winter transfer window of January 2022, Newcastle had just been taken over by PAF, and Kieran Trippier became the first signing under the PAF Amanda Staveley Reuben Brothers regime for £12 million plus £3 million in add-ons. And that was sending a message to the likes of Bruno and Isak at the time, saying something's going on here at Newcastle. He was an established Champions League player, an established England international, but he said, I'm going to go and be part of this project. And I think especially for other players on the continent, this really made Newcastle stand out as an exciting project. The PIF with huge backing. I think at the time people thought we were going to be going crazy with Mbappe and Messi. Little did we know that associated party transactions was going to be voted in by the Premier League clubs right after Newcastle were taken over. And PSR and FFP, we all know, has put the handbrakes and the handcuffs on Newcastle spending ridiculous money. That means an Abramovich type Chelsea spending ridiculous money, and then a Man City Robinho, Aguero, David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne type takeover was never going to happen at Newcastle. We ended up with the likes of Chris Wood, Matt Targett, obviously Kieran Trippier being the first, but later on then got Isak and Bruno Guimaraes, and the rest, as we know, is history. We know also that Kieran Trippier became one of the club's kind of captains. Jamal Lascelles was officially the captain. Then it was Trippier, but because he was out the team due to the form of Livramento, and Bruno took the captaincy. So when the club won their first silverware in over 70 years, it was all 3 players that actually lifted the silverware for Newcastle. So you can say what you like about the type of player that he is, but that image will forever be etched in Newcastle's history and us, the fans' memories, in terms of eventually getting that hoodoo and that monkey off our back, by getting that first piece of silverware that the club and the fans have been craving for a lifetime for many people. I think also we should look back and remember that when he first started in that Premier League defence, Newcastle had by far the best defence in the Premier League. With him, Pope, Botman and Byrne and Shaw and Lascelles, that defence that Newcastle had in the very, very early days of Eddie Howe's tenure at Newcastle was unbelievable. They conceded the least amount of goals, they stopped the most amount of crosses, and it is weird how Newcastle have kind of come away from this real defensive, solid team that we first saw under Eddie Howe. So it will be 4.5 years that Kieran Trippier will have been at Newcastle, initially steering us away from relegation. He came to the club when Newcastle were in 19th, don't forget. And as I said before, he was at a Champions League club at Atletico Madrid. It was seen as a bit of a risk, but more so a show of faith that this club is going somewhere. And as I said before, I don't think we would have got the likes of Bruno and Tonali, or even trying to entice Anthony Gordon away from Everton at the time. Don't forget who was Newcastle's player of the season in the 2022-2023 campaign. And also don't forget those two unbelievable direct free kicks he scored against Everton and Aston Villa. We are really going to miss his delivery from right back and corners as well. So we took to social media to announce that he will be leaving Newcastle. I don't know whether or not the club would have offered him a contract extension. He is currently 35. His legs and performances have dipped slightly. He's covered massively for Tino Livramento's injuries that he's had this season. And in the 4.5 years he's been at the club, he's made 115 appearances. And it did get me to thinking, is he Newcastle's best ever right back in modern history? I think we would be hard pressed to find another type of character and player with his ability. You think in the last 10-15 years, in terms of the players that we've had in that position, Habib Bayer, Stephen Carr was probably really good. Obviously Warren Barton back in the late 90s. Steve Watson played Darren Peacock a little bit as well. They were obviously more centre halves. I do think this 4.5 year period where Kieran Trippier has been at right back, as well as being an England regular, I really do think he set the standards at the club, not being afraid to front up to the fans and back Eddie Howe. Whether you think that's right or wrong, please let me know in the comments. What do you think about him being Newcastle's best right back over in the last 20 years? I think you would be hard pressed to find another one. If I've forgotten anybody, let me know in the comments below. I do think this summer is definitely going to be a turning point with Newcastle. We cannot have a summer the same as what we did last season. Going into this summer, there are huge question marks about Eddie Howe being at the helm at Newcastle. Is he the right guy to take us forward? We've got an aging squad. The likes of Ramsdale's loan is coming to an end. Should we or shouldn't we make that permanent? Reportedly for £20 million. We have the option on it. Kieran Trippier, we know is gone. Fabian Schär's contract's expired. Emil Kraft at right back as well. An absolute waste of 50 grand a week, if you ask me. And obviously we've got the two keepers in Gillespie and Ruddy, whose contracts are up as well. I think they're only at the club to fulfill our homegrown quota status. Why we are not giving the reserve team or the youth goalkeepers opportunities is beyond me. Newcastle have a fantastic record of bringing through keepers. You think about Foster, you think about Krul being young at the time, and obviously Darlow at Leeds, which is a homegrown Newcastle. He would be an unbelievable number two, and he was for many, many years. If we're talking about who's coming and who's going, the thing with Kieran Trippier is that he leaves a gaping hole in the leadership team at Newcastle. We already lost Jamal Lascelles in the winter window this year. Now we know Trippier's contract's not going to be renewed because he's taken that out of the club's hands. We know that Schär's going. Byrne is a leader of the team. And I think it was exemplified for me in particular in two instances this year. One was when he came out and publicly backed Eddie Howe, saying he signed me twice. The players believe in him. We have the full backing of the manager. The other example where Kieran Trippier really showed leadership for me, and I know this to divide opinion of many of the fans, when he had that public spat with Anthony Gordon because Newcastle were 4-0 up or something, and Kieran Trippier wanted the penalty to be taken by Voltemade, who was in desperate need for a goal, to feel that ball going into the back of the net. But Anthony Gordon said, no, I'm the penalty taker. I think that was great captaincy. Perhaps it should have been done behind closed doors at halftime in the changing room, but it kind of happened whilst the players were walking off the field at halftime. For me, I don't mind that. That was Kieran Trippier showing that he wanted the best for Newcastle. He didn't want to take the penalty himself. He didn't want to give it to his mate. He wanted the best for the team. He knew someone's already scored a hat-trick. Somebody else needs some goals. Let's give the goal to that guy. And ultimately, that is the best for Newcastle. But as I said, he leaves a gaping hole in the leadership team at Newcastle. Bruno, hopefully, fingers crossed, will stay. I can't see him going anywhere. Dan Burn. We know Eddie Howe loves Dan Burn. I think that he should definitely stay at Newcastle as well. He's a homegrown boy. He wears his heart on his sleeve. I know his performances have curtailed slightly this season. That might just be due to the amount of games that he's had to play. And you can't argue that Kieran Trippier, in his 4.5 years, hasn't given his absolute best for the club. And because of that, I would like to say thank you to him. I wish him well and where he goes next. At this stage of players' careers, when they start reaching mid-30s, it's always rumoured that they can potentially go to Saudi for a big payday, or perhaps go to America where the pace of the football is not as much, with Europe and all the domestic cups as well. It's a hell of a lot of football to play for a 35-year-old. Going to the US, maybe gearing down ever so slightly. We know the likes of Beckham, Rooney, Gerrard, they all did it. Or maybe he might go to one of the promoted teams. I can't see him at this stage of his career going to a promoted team. It would be really good purely because of that leadership that he shows, not just his ability on the pitch. The other issue with Kieran Trippier leaving is that one of our players who is reported to be on the move this summer is Tino Livramento. Now, as you know, we bought Tino Livramento from Southampton a couple of years ago for £32 million plus £8 million in add-ons. It was seen as a bit of a risk, but he's established himself as one of the best English right backs in the country. And if Tino Livramento goes, and we now know Kieran Trippier is going, we then have two big holes to fill in the right back berth. We know we're obviously not getting any transfer fee because he's leaving at the end of his contract, and we know he's on circa 120 grand a week, so that should free up a bit of wages that we could either entice some of the stars to stay, or that we could offer some potential incomings to the club. What's your view on Kieran Trippier? Do you think he's a modern great for Newcastle? Do you think we should have offered him a year extension, considering his leadership abilities, and then maybe start phasing him into coaching if that's the way he wants to go? Or are you happy to see the end of Kieran Trippier? Do you think his time is done? Let's move on and find somebody else. Again, just to wrap up from my point of view, thank you very much, Kieran Trippier, for coming to Newcastle, for that leap of faith, first one through the door, what you've done in the 4.5 years, getting us away from that relegation in the first season, Champions League qualification twice, 2 cup finals, one of them with which we won, an England regular, and I think in time when we look back, probably a Newcastle great. Thanks for watching. Please do give us a like, a subscribe, and don't forget,